What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 51, brought to you by the Antisocial Network. Today, we got a really awesome guest, super cool dude. U.S. Army vet like myself, gotta love these little hour and a half talks with vets. We got Chad Osinga, Mr. Tenacity. What's up, man?
What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Yeah, dude, you look like a boxer, bro. You look like a boxer.
I did. I used to fight. Yeah,
Oh shit! Oh shit!
yeah. That
Okay.
was my jam for a long time.
Nice, nice. All right, Mister Tenacity. Let's get into it. Give us a formal introduction of yourself, man.
Yeah, man. So I like you said, I was military. I kind of joined the army because I didn't have any other options. I didn't join to be like this hero. Like everyone thinks that we join to do this heroic stuff. For me, it was trying to give my family something better. I grew up in a small town that didn't have a lot going on, right? Like it was either drugs, working on a farm, or in a factory. And most kids, they just went down really bad paths. And I was going down that path. I was a knucklehead. My mom was a drug addict. So I grew up really with some gnarly stuff. Like my house was raided when I was 14 years old, and I went to live with family in Oklahoma. That didn't go well. I was abused there, so I had a lot of childhood stuff that sent me down some really bad paths, and so the army was my way to try to make everything right and not give my kids the same life that I had. And so I joined as a 19 Delta as a scout, and I loved it. Well, at first I hated it because I didn't know what I was signing up for, right? I at all. I didn't look into it. You ever made those decisions where you're like, I'm going all in, but you never really investigate what all in looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't investigate 4 a.m. runs and shorts when it's freezing cold outside, right? And so at first it was hard, but it became something that was really the one of the best things in my life. It got me straight. It helped me out. I ended up becoming a sniper, and I loved what I was doing. I became an instructor in the military, and so I really embraced my role. But then I ended up getting injured. I went off of a roof in Iraq head first, and it just caused a lot of complications. And the army was just like, "You're done, dude." They didn't give me much of an option. Try to fight it for a little bit, and after I got out is when like the bullshit really started for me, right? It wasn't like when you're in, you have a purpose, you have a focus, at least for me. But when I got out, it was like the demons just swarmed on me, man, and I couldn't go to sleep. So I started drinking to just go to sleep. And then my mom, I didn't realize, I didn't put two and two together. My mom had this really big addiction, right? I didn't I didn't even put it together. So I started drinking. Next thing you know, what turned into a nightly thing turned into a fifth of whiskey, on a good day, right? If I could get more in me, then I would. And you know, I I was just I was living recklessly, man. I was losing my wife. I've been married. I've been with her for 24 years, bro. And 19 of that was married or is married. And I have 4 kids, and I was losing my relationship with all of them, right? I
yeah,
was didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to do anything. I was just living in my head, bro, and trying to drink it all away.
yeah.
And I was just screwing my life up. And I started taking up riding motorcycles again, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. But that was part of the reason that I started changing my life was a really severe accident that left me actually two, but the second one was really gnarly and left me unable to walk and do. But it was like the best thing that ever happened to me, dude. I ended up changing it up and saving my marriage and my relationship with my kids, and now I'm on like a mission to really help people realize that there's a legend on the inside of them, right? Like we don't realize our potential. We don't realize the greatness on the inside of us. And sometimes you got to go through some things to discover that, like I did. But it's in there, man. Each and every one of us has something special, right? And so I'm just on that mission now to try to help as many people as I can.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I completely agree. I feel like I said this yesterday to one of my guests I was recording with, but I'll say it to you, man. I feel like I'm listening to me because
Yeah,
that pretty much like my story, and I think that's the same for a lot of us, right? A lot of us vets that get in those situations where we're in the military, we learn some good and bad habits, and then we get out, and then we really lean into those bad habits, thinking that shit's acceptable,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then those bad habits become worse.
yeah, yeah. Because like drinking is the thing in the military. Like, the
Yeah,
shopettes are, I mean, even if you're overseas, like we were just talking, we were both in Germany. The shopettes were, at least when I was there, was open all night, right? 24 hours a day. And they did not turn you away. So you could be stumbling in at 4 a.m. and they would sell you a fifth of liquor, no problem, right?
yeah,
And yeah, so you're right. You exit the military with this thought process that this is the way I did it for those many years, like, and it just becomes a lifestyle.
yeah. I'm fully convinced, and we'll go on this a little bit later on. I'm fully convinced that the military breeds addiction, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
fucking, and then when you get addicted, you get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about it, like it's all about that identity too. Like part of the identity of being a soldier is we drink. We're divorced. You can't be a sergeant major unless what? You're divorced one time, have an Article 15, and you're an alcoholic, right?
Yeah,
So, all of these things are embedded in us, like right from the get go. We're no nonsense. We have no emotion. All of these things, and we embody this identity, and we exit the military with that, and it's just it doesn't serve us very well.
hell no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So let's get into it, man.
Yeah,
Let's get into it. Talked about some childhood stuff. What happened there, man?
dude, my childhood was nuts. So my mom, she struggled with drugs for years before I was ever born, and she like hard stuff like cocaine, and then it went to crack. And by the time I was born, she was really wild, man. And I was born with actual herbs of palsy, and so my left side wouldn't work, and she helped me gain my mobility back, but then went like super hard into the drugs after that. And there was no guidance for me. Like I had a learning disability. I don't know if it was because of her drug use or not, but I struggled a lot growing up. I didn't understand. Like I just couldn't catch what they were throwing, right?
Yeah.
And uh so school was really hard. I was getting picked on. Teachers were calling me dumb. So I just didn't believe in myself. And I go home and she's just all in on these drugs. She's not present with me. She would leave me for hours while she goes and gets high at night. And we lived in a bad neighborhood in a small apartment. And I remember, 7, 8 years old, just scared shitless because I didn't have any siblings. I was just by myself. I had no idea where she was. Back then they didn't have cell phones. So it's not like I had any means to get a hold of her, right? And so it was just a lot of confusion growing up. And then she ended up bringing these drug dealers into our home, living in our home. That's how my house ended up getting raided. Was she moved these guys in basically, and they started selling drugs. She basically turned my house into a crack house, and they were
Mm.
selling. They had kilos buried in our small backyard. We had a real small backyard. And they had kilos buried under there. I had no clue.
God damn.
By the time I turned 14, I wasn't going to school. I was selling drugs for these guys. I believe that they had saved me because, like, she would spend all of our money. I didn't have any food. I was anorexic, or not anorexic, anemia. Sorry. It was one of those A words, but anemia. And, like, I didn't get the proper nutrients, right? And so they would feed me. They would but I didn't realize that they were just trying to get me, hook, line, and sinker, right, with what they wanted me to do. And then they had me selling for them, and it was just one of those processes. At 14, I'm thinking I'm, you know, uh, where I'm supposed to be. Like I'm with the guys that are doing it. They had the nice cars, and so it was wild that time in my life. And then my house ends up getting raided. She goes to federal prison, and my the court system wouldn't send me to family in Virginia, but they worked a deal out where I wouldn't go to jail, because they basically said, hey, he was a product of his environment, type deal. They worked something out with the judge where I would be put on probation, but I would have to leave the state.
Yeah.
And so I went to live with some family in Oklahoma, and it was supposed to be like this good thing for me, dude. Like learn, good habits and what love looks like. And dude, I was not received with that. It didn't even seem like they wanted me there. And at the time I didn't know, but they were getting paid by the state to keep me.
Wow.
So I was just a paycheck to them, and they wouldn't. I only talked to two people, my grandmother and my mother. And they would not let me talk to them unless they monitored the phone calls, right? Because they had the old quarter phones where you
Yeah.
could pick it up and listen. They would read all of my mail before I could read it, and then they would just beat me. There was times where I was black and blue and bleeding. And one day my grandmother called me, and I don't know why they allowed me to talk to her, but she skipped all you know, the grass is green. How's the weather? She skipped all of that stuff. She went, it's okay to come home. And they ripped the phone out of my hand and hung it up. So I had no idea why she had said that, but I knew that was like my sign, right? I was
Right.
going to get out of there. So I ended up running away the first time I got caught, because I didn't have a good plan, right? I was, 15 at the time. I didn't really know where I was going. And the second time, though, I learned from those mistakes, right? Like I really had a decent mind back then, more than I gave myself credit for, because I devised a whole nother plan. And in a month, I was able to get from Oklahoma all the way to Virginia.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I made it back to Virginia, only to get arrested for breaking the probation that I was on. But the courts ended up giving me custody to family in Virginia. So my life had gotten a little bit better as far as where I was going to live, but the damage was really done, dude. Like 15 years of being beat, neglected, being called dumb. So, you know, I ended up, what changed that whole, I guess, style of living that I was in, was I met a girl. It's always a girl, right?
Yeah.
But
That's
I, I met this girl, and she saw something in me, dude, that I just didn't see in myself. But she was the hottest thing I had ever seen. So I was like, I'm sticking with her. And she gave me an ultimatum. She was like, if you want to stay with me, you got to stop selling drugs. You got to stop, living in the streets. Like, you got to clean up your act. So I started to do that, and we ended up getting married, having two kids, but I was still struggling financially. We were living in low income housing. And after my second kid was born, I just realized, man, like, I have to do something different, or they're going to grow up in the same environment, that I did, with the poverty and not having a lot of opportunities. So that's why I joined the military, because I dropped out of school when I was in ninth grade. Like, I gave up on all of that stuff. And so I didn't have anything to leverage as far as working for someone. I didn't have any skills, but the army was going to take me, right? They
yeah.
were, yeah, we'll take you, dude. You know, we'll let you go run towards bullets, and
Yeah.
that's what they did, man. And like I said, that was kind of, I guess, my childhood uh, in a nutshell.
Man, that's wild, dude. And you had mentioned prior to this, that you didn't realize about the alcohol and stuff with the addiction. We'll get
Yeah,
into that in a little bit, man. But that's insane. And on top of that, like You grew up in the 80s, like yeah, like 80s, 90s.
Yeah, I was born in 81. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that crack epidemic in the 80s was
Oh,
terrible.
dude, it was, man, and they would, like, when I was growing up, they would cut the crack with angel dust. So the first batch, they would cut it with angel dust, and they would get these cats like just completely like that
Yeah.
was the best crack ever, right? And
Yeah.
dude, that was a wrap, man. They were just chasing the rabbit after that, man. Like,
Yeah.
or what, chasing the dragon, whatever they call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, man. Like I've heard from people that because I never got into like anything super hard. I never got addicted to anything super hard. I'll share that mentality with you later. But um, I've heard from people that did crack that like they never intended to get hooked, but that first time that they did it was boom, they were
Yeah,
sold.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so yeah, man, that crack epidemic in the 70s and 80s was terrible.
yeah. It was gnarly, dude.
For,
It was just taking over, and like the drug dealers that we were dealing with, they had a big drug ring. It went from New York all the way down to Miami.
mm,
So these weren't like, the corner guys that were just hustling, small amounts. Like these guys were really involved with it, and they were all from bigger cities like New York and Miami and you know uh, Richmond, Virginia, like just bigger cities, and they came to these smaller towns because they knew that they would make the money was there, and they were right, man. I mean, they just had whole apartment complexes strung out, man. It was nuts. It really was.
man, and like you're talking about like how your mom acted toward you and stuff like that, and like how she treated you, man, and like that had to have like instilled some real serious trust issues, man.
Oh yeah, dude. I didn't trust. Yeah, I struggled with trust. The only person, and there's still times where I catch myself having to, just kind of put myself here and now. But yeah, I've definitely struggled because she ended up she got out of prison. I forgot to say this, and she ended up getting addicted again and passing away. She overdosed
Mhm.
and died. And so yeah, there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of just gnarly memories with that. But at the same time, like one good thing that's happened or is a part of me, I guess, is the ability to not hold on too much. Like that, like when I was younger, it was bad. But as I've gotten older, I have my moments, but for the most part, I'm pretty much like locked into right now. That was then. I can't do anything about it. It's done, and I'm here. So
Yeah, it's that acceptance.
yeah,
Yeah, man.
yeah,
And then going to Oklahoma, man, going to people that are supposed to take care of you, bro, and like going to those people that say that they love and they care about you, and then they just treat you like absolute dog shit. That's fucking
dude.
terrible.
Well, and what made it even worse is they were heavy in the church, and they were like the my aunt worked in the for this really big church in Oklahoma. And if you've ever been to Oklahoma, Oklahoma is like Bible city, man. Like every if you are connected, you can't really do wrong, right? At least back then, and that was the case. My uncle, he was a big dude. He worked on the oil rigs. He's the one that threw me around the house and turned me black and blue one day over some, I mean, just small, minute stuff, dude. Like, and you're, it just, it, that was part of my problem was you don't learn to love yourself because you don't think that you're worth it, right? You don't see yourself as worthy of love or anything, right? And so I definitely struggled with that mentality growing up. And that's why, like, there was a point in my life where I would have rolled a blunt and smoked it in front of a cop just to see, just because I didn't care. Like, I truly didn't care about my tomorrow. Like, I didn't even think I was going to make it to 25. So I had a lot of uh, really bad outlooks on just life as a whole because of the way I was brought up and because of the way I was treated by people that were supposed to love me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you brought up and you said, that you didn't know what love is, man. Like I remember this common goddamn phrase, and you probably heard it too. I'm doing this because I love you. And I fucking hated that.
Yeah, me
Learn
too.
to hate that statement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know, man. That's you know, uh, yeah. They took it too far. I mean, I'm a parent of 4 kids, and I understand that discipline has to be there in some form, right? You have to give them consequences, or else, dude, they'll run all over you, man. But there are lines, and yeah, you don't beat the shit out of somebody and say, "I'm doing this because I love you." Nah, that's not love, dude. That's
Nope.
not love. Maybe
Nope.
that you got the shit beat out of you when you were a kid. A lot of and that's what I've learned um, growing, getting older, right? Because I caught myself repeating the same shit that was done to me, and I it's kind of like, I don't know, woke me up and made me realize that a lot of the people, they just are doing it subconsciously because it was done to them. They think that that's the right thing to do, so they're just repeating what was done to them. And because I ended up almost falling in that same category, I had to catch myself, like, whoa, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like that's not the way to do it. So
No, definitely
yeah,
not. So, yeah, drop out of high school.
yeah.
You're married with 2 kids at this point. You decide to join the army. What made you choose Calf Scout?
So they played this damn video.
It's always the video.
Yeah, dude. And there was these guys that came out of this tall grass and a helicopter flying over, and then they had these dirt bikes, and I was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And it's funny because I had a really good friend who was force recon for the Marines, and he told me, he said, "Don't do combat." He said they're gonna want you to. He's like, "Go get a trade." And he said, and if you like the army, then you can re up and do something else, right? He was like, but at least get a skill out of it. So that way, if you don't like it, you do your 3 or 4 years and you can transition out to go do something good with your life. Did I
Yeah.
listen? No, no. They played that damn video and that was it. That was it.
Yeah, it's always the fucking video, man. It's always that video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, that I mean, when I went to MEPS and I signed my contract to be a forward observer, they were like, "Yeah, dude, you're gonna sit and watch bombs drop on a TV in New York City." I was like, "Fuck yeah, dude, let's do this."
All in.
Yeah, right, right. So, where did you go to basic at, man?
Fort Knox. It
Okay,
was back before they moved everything to Benning. I think everything's at Benning now.
yeah, just about, yeah. Okay, so you go to Fort Knox. I'm assuming because your childhood was chaotic, that basic was pretty fucking easy for you.
Yeah, I didn't have too many problems. The only thing I had a problem with was the discipline, like I s- like having someone yell at me,
Mm.
um, and not be able to react in any way was the hardest part. I think that was, but like, you know, the running. I say I didn't look into it. I got myself accustomed to it really fast. I actually started really enjoying working out. It was a way for me to kind of get a lot of my anger and frustration out. So I looked forward to ultimately getting up and working out and doing those things. So that part wasn't too hard. It was really just the structure part of it because I didn't have structure my entire life, and then you are introduced to nothing but structure, right? And it's like this, and it's expected whether you like it or not. And I still consider myself a part of that group of individuals that had it fairly thorough and basic, right? Like there wasn't a lot of leniency. Like I think I got to use the phone once. The entire it was still OSET, so yeah, yeah, 12 week was it 12 weeks for OSET? I can't even remember.
Yeah, it's something like 12 weeks for OSUT.
Yeah,
Because I think it was like 9 weeks for basic and regular
yeah,
basic.
yeah, yeah, and all of that's together, right? So we don't. That's the difference. Like if anyone's wondering, that's OSET is all together. Your basic and your training for your skill set It's all one. It's all blended. So you don't know the damn difference between. They kept us in red face, like it's just like red face all the way through. Right? It was
Right.
it was it was hideous.
Wild, wild, man. Yeah, I know. Basically, it was easy for me because my childhood was chaotic, and then AIT was easy as shit too. It's just the technical stuff I couldn't pick up on, man.
Yeah.
But so you finished basic in AIT. It's a little shock because I was airborne. Why didn't you go airborne?
Dude, it never. Well, all right. So I had two schools of thought.
Mm,
One, the opportunity I could have went for it, I think, but it never was like right in front of me. But I
mm,
always wanted to do shit that the average person didn't do.
mm.
So, um, airborne was a dime a dozen. Everybody was going after it, and so I had in my head that I was gonna do the sniper thing, and
Oh, yeah.
that's really what I wanted because I knew it was hard. And the cool thing is, I got an opportunity when I was stationed in Germany to go to a special operations sniper course. And so
Nice.
I didn't go to Benin. I went to, and so all of my instructors were special operations. The the commandant was a special forces lieutenant colonel, I believe.
Wow.
And so it was like really high speed and it was fucking hard. Like that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted that challenge. I wanted to see if I could do it. The guy that drove me there failed the first day. So like day one, they kicked him home. They sent him home.
Wow.
Yeah, they made us do a ruck march. The very like so it was open to all NATO forces. So all these special forces from different countries were coming in, and then you had the American side as well there. And so they had a language test. You had to be able to speak fluent English, and then you had a ruck march. And if you failed either one of those, you were sent home.
Mm,
Uh, and the ruck march was like running, dude. Like it wasn't. It was one of those times where it's like 80 pounds on your back, and you have to run the entire time. The only thing they did that was nice is they gave us a pacer. So as long as you kept up with that dude, you knew you were gonna pass.
jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. Was it 12K ruck?
I don't even remember. It was longer than 12K.
Whew. Okay.
Yeah.
Goddamn. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's wild. So your first duty station, bomb holder?
No, no, it was Fort.
No.
So I had the worst thing that could ever have happened to a soldier.
Mm-hmm.
I get out and I get my orders and it says I'm staying at Fort Knox. So I had to
Oh,
work at the training. Yeah, it was fucking horrible, dude. Like Tradoc right off the out the gate. Um, it was miserable. So
mm,
I spent what was it, about a year and a half, and I was able to re-enlist, and I
mm,
re-enlisted for 6 years to go to Germany, and that's when I went to bomb holder. But yeah, my first duty station was Fort Knox, and training like they because back then at Fort Knox they had the officer training course there,
mm-hmm.
so you would be like their driver on their ops and stuff. And dude, you talking about some spoiled situations right there, dude. Like I mean 50 cows, they would break it. Hey driver, fix the 50 cow. And you're like, hold
Jeez.
on, dude, this is your training. Like I know how to work a 50 cal. Like, so
Mm,
it was one of those situations where it was very if you get prior service or I mean prior enlisted guys that move up to officer, they were the coolest. But the guys that were coming from like uh was it New York?
West Point.
Yeah, West Point. Those guys, a lot of those guys were real like spoiledish in their
Yeah.
mindset. You know what I mean? They wanted the guys that were enlisted to do everything for them when it was their training in the first place. So I didn't like it at all. And what's crazy is you didn't deploy from there. And out of the first year, I was gone 8 months in the training field, in the field with these guys for like 8 months out of the 12. I was never home.
Sheesh. Damn. Damn. So you go from being a part of the cadre essentially
Yeah.
at Fort Knox to go into to bomb holder. How was that change of pace at PCS for you?
Oh God, I loved it. It for me, it was what I wanted, right? So I was looking forward to it. For me, it was more relaxed. You know, Tradoc is very by the numbers, right? Everything has to be perfect. Your uniform has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. There's always somebody that has rank that's walking around like just wanting to catch somebody up for not doing, what they're supposed to. And once you get to the combat side, they still have that, but it's a lot less, right? You have a mission, you have way bigger fish to fry, and so for me, it was a great change of pace. I knew that the training, me being gone training, it was for a reason. It wasn't just to help some dudes, go through their officer basic course or whatever it's called. Uh,
Hmm.
this was for actually going overseas and deploying. You got to get that sense of teamwork, that
Yeah.
you just didn't have in TRADOC. So you're creating a team with other guys. So I really enjoyed that aspect of being in the military, man, and being on that side of the house on the combat side.
Nice, nice. And so you get over there. I'm assuming you didn't have your wife and your kids. How hard was it to get them over there to, for command sponsorship?
No, they came with me. Yeah, they flew over. It was nuts though because they didn't have housing for us. So Germany is a different beast. We ended up having to go in this hotel off base, and Germany, the houses are different there, right? They're a lot smaller than what you're used to in America. So the hotels are the same way. They're very small. And so you have four kids, or no, at the time I had my two. My other two hadn't been born. So I had my two, and then you had me and my wife in this small little, hotelish thing. And so we did that for a while until they could find housing for us because there was just nothing available. Uh, so that was like the hardest thing is we had no car, you had nothing, so you're having to walk everywhere you go. You know, I stayed in shape. I mean, there was a lot of bonuses, I guess, but it was difficult. And back then we weren't doing well financially. They don't pay you a lot in the military, and so I think I was like a specialist. So you're still not making really good money. And I had two kids, and they're making me pay for this hotel out of pocket until they reimburse me. And if you've ever dealt with the Army, they'll take your money quick, but giving it back to you takes a minute. And so, financially, we were already kind of behind the eight ball because of that, right? Going to a new country, and we're trying to figure it all out. So it's a lot to process, but we finally got on base, and then I was already gone. I didn't even see my furniture get there. I was already in the field. I was in Graph by the time. We were gone. Just, I mean, it was quick. As a soldier, I liked it. As a husband, it sucked.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. How long after you get there was your first deployment?
Not even a year. I got there in the winter, and I think we left that April.
Mhm.
Yeah, something like that. I got there. I think it was like November. My wife is better with. I've been hit in the head a lot, so dates always fuck me up. But I know that we left in like the springtime, and
Okay.
our first deployment was a 15-monther. So we went for a grip of time.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I mean, it's what I wanted to, you know.
Right. Right. So you guys go to Iraq? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've only been to Iraq.
Okay. So you guys go to Iraq. Where in Iraq did you guys go?
So, have you ever heard Diyala province?
Yep.
Yeah, it's the shittiest place I think that ever existed on the face of the earth. It gets like hot, like 130, I think, was one of the hottest days that we had, was like 130. And back then, this is 2008, so this was the surge, and things were popping off, dude. And it was we. So at one point in Diala, we lost the whole task force. So, right, we got included into a task force. The entire task force lost 40 trucks in a month.
Wow.
40 trucks. We averaged 4 trucks getting hit by IEDs every day. And so what we air assaulted in. And when we air assaulted in, we only had the supplies. They dropped a body bag full of water. And that was really all we had, right? And we didn't realize how long we were going to be there, right? And so next thing you know, they're like, okay, we're going to send you trucks, right, full of supplies. The trucks get blown up, and we lost. I think the first convoy they lost 2 guys, and it got so bad that Humvees weren't allowed to come in. It was only MRAPs. I mean, even the dude, the trucks to recover the trucks that got blown up were getting blown up, dude. Like it was. I had never experienced anything that insane. Like it almost felt like a dream. I don't even know how to explain that. It didn't seem real, right?
Yeah.
Like we would make bets. We would see because they finally were able to get some trucks in, and some guys from Third ID. They were south of us, and they were able to come in from the south and bring us supply. If Third ID hadn't came in, they brought a Bradley in full of water, MREs, and dude, if they hadn't have done that, I don't know how long we would have lasted. We had run out of water, we had run out of food. Like I think for 3 days I didn't piss. So yeah, like we were all just and you know this is summer in Diala, 130 degrees, dude. Like we were just wasting the fuck away, and it just did. We seemed like we were trapped. We walked in to make the story even crazier. So I guess our operation got leaked, and Al Jazeera leaked it out. And so because when we air assaulted and we came in, there was a compound that was like the target, and we go in there and the beds were like warm, dude. Like they knew, right?
Yeah.
Like they had just fucking left, man. And we didn't understand how they would know. And then on the back end, we realized that Al Jazeera leaked it, and so because the entire town was like a ghost town, right? But we kept getting hit by all of these IEDs,
Yeah.
and it was so it was a lot of confusion because we you didn't see any enemies, but you were getting hit everywhere, right? Like it was, and we were fine, and we would go on, um, on patrols and find, um, IEDs buckets full of stuff under the ground, and it was just like, what in the world is going on? You put two and two together finally, and there's a village that they were coming in. They were actually taking that. I don't know if you've ever been to Diala, but they have culverts that are like when I say deep, if you put a bicycle with a person on it, you can't see the person. And that's literally what they were doing. So they were riding the culverts. They would come up under the road, and they would triple stack anti-tank mines, and they would put them up under the road. And that's why we had to go only MRAP, because they were destroying the Humvees, dude. Like people were just, I mean, that was it, man.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was a gnarly experience. One that I'll never forget. It made me a better man, I believe, but it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, no joke, no joke, man. I've never been to Iraq. I know a lot of people who have, and I've done a lot of study on Iraq and stuff like that. I know exactly what you're talking about, though,
Yeah,
and that shit is crazy, man. This shit's
yeah,
crazy.
dude. Yeah, man.
So you're on that deployment. You get back home. How was the transition going from deployment to back home?
Uh, you know, we you have you're still connected to it's hard. Um, because you're like heightened over there. You're real heightened, and though you know you're in a different place, you're still there. Like it's hard to because for 15 months, right? That's been the mentality is to be aware, be aware, be aware, threat, 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 threat. And so coming back to uh, an area that doesn't have very many threats, you still are triggered by a lot of stuff. And then the alcohol doesn't help. You go blackout drunk just to try to stay level, I think, you know? So it was a mixture of, not knowing how to handle this new environment or trying to adjust, but not being able to turn it off. So to turn it off, you just get wasted. And that's literally what we were doing, that was the transition was a drunken, I mean, there were people that could barely stand in formation afterwards because they're still drunk the next morning, right? I mean, all the way up to the captain level, just
Yeah.
wasted, dude.
Yeah. You learn to become a functioning alcoholic after a
Yeah,
deployment.
yeah, yeah, dude. Like you could smell a run a mile away, dude. 'Cause it's just alcohol coming through the pores, bro. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. How was that
Yeah.
transition with your family?
Uh, you know, they were happy to see me, of course, but they didn't. They expect the person that left, and that person is no longer existing. You never come back the same. I don't care what anybody wants to argue. A piece of you is left there, right? And you come back and they're still treating you like this, but you're completely different. So there's that adjustment between you and your family that it's awkward. There's a lot of confusion and misinterpretation of the where they are compared to where you are. So it's hard. And if you have kids, you've been gone for however long, right?
Yeah.
And the kids don't want to listen that because you've been gone. They have feelings of anger and frustration and not understanding, depending on how old they are. Right? They just don't get why dad was gone for so long.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff that you got to work through. Ultimately, I got a great family, and we were able to work through it for the most part, and deal with those issues. So it worked out.
Yeah, that transition period with your family is super super important. Not just because you're getting back, but there's no fucking class that's taught on how
No,
how to receive the person coming back home,
no.
or how as you as a service member to get back home and reintegrate yourself.
They do that reintegration period when you get back, right? And it's all like YouTube videos. Like, what I mean by that is there's not a lot of great information that's realistic to where you are, right? And the the little bit that maybe can help, you're not listening because you don't want to be there in the first damn place. So, that reintegration period is hard, and I guess it's different for everybody, but it was a little sketchy for me for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I could agree. I could agree that reintegration is very important, but the reintegration classes and that time is very important. But like you said, you just don't want to be there, so you don't fucking listen, and you check
Yeah,
the boxes when you get that paper saying I'm okay, I'm fine,
yeah,
nobody, nothing's happening.
yeah, and that's another thing that, man, not just me, but a lot of people. I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, and you're taught to just say you're good, and if you're combat, not being good is frowned upon, like really, really frowned upon. It's it's like the lowest thing that you can do, man. Like you could being a shitbag is better than not being okay, right?
Yeah,
And so you push this shit down, right? You don't address it, and as men, we don't address shit, right? We just keep burying it under the rug. But eventually, it 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 comes out like the demon in the closet breaks free, dude, and it's bad. It is, and it's like too strong because you've been feeding it this whole time. All that shit that it's just like feeding the monster, dude. It really is.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I tell people that I talk to about this that don't understand the military lifestyle. It's like this: the military's approach to anything, really, like physical, mental, emotional, any of that is if it's broke, go get it fixed. But if you get it fixed, you're a bitch, and
Yeah,
and that is an absolute shit mentality to
yeah,
right because let's say you go out right and you're going on a mission, you gotta prep, right? You wouldn't walk out with a half full battery in your radio. You wouldn't walk out
right,
with a half load in your
right.
M4, right?
Yeah,
So why the fuck would you walk out with a half full soldier?
right. And you would get reamed if you did that right before a mission, right? But you're right. We do the same thing mentality, and we walk out of the military with that same viewpoint, and that's why the marriages fail. That's why these guys are committing suicide. They didn't deal with it, and then that monster gets so strong and so big, and they're face to face with it, but they can't go get help either because they'd be a bitch, right?
Right.
It's-
Yeah, and I mean, for me, like I tore my meniscus in like 2014 during a
mm,
deployment, and I wrote it out, got back home, and it was that reintegration period. I went and got it fixed, and my platoon sergeant looked at me. He was like, "You're a fucking bitch." I was a staff sergeant at the time. He's like, "You're a fucking bitch." I was like, "So, like, look at these X-rays, right? These X-rays show that something is wrong." And he's like, "Oh, well, my shoulder's jacked up." I'm like, "That's on you, homie. Like, you fucked that up."
Dude, I did that with my shoulder actually. I and now I've had to have two surgeries. My bicep tendon is over here, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's torn again,
yeah,
and it's all because I tried to soldier through it, right, and not be a bitch. You put the mission before yourself, and I get why we teach that, but we have to teach also how to take care of yourself, and it's okay to take care. There's periods where taking care of yourself is a must, right? And when
yeah,
you're on the rear end, right? That's when you take care of yourself, right? That's when you get yourself ready for the fight. Not to continue to go hard for no reason, but you're right, man. They just the answer is always go harder.
yeah.
Oh yeah, you hurt. Just go harder. Just
Right. Right, and that came after the meniscus tearing and going on a 5 mile run and looking at him and saying I can't walk. Like
yeah,
literally, leg was locked. Like I'm sure you know what it feels like to have a meniscus tear or something like that. But like just like leg locked. I couldn't walk upstairs. I was like, look, dude, there's something wrong. And yes, that happened. And that's the complete wrong mentality, right? Because like I said, you won't go out on patrol with half empty mags. You won't go out on patrol with half empty radio. Like, why the fuck would you send a half empty soldier to go do a job?
yeah. And I think that you're more of a man and you're a stronger individual by facing the things and getting them fixed, whether that's mentally or physically, it doesn't really matter, right? But dealing with it, facing it, coming toe to toe with that thing and making it your bitch, right? Instead
Yeah,
of saying I'm not going to deal with it, feeding it, and then you become its bitch. You're not strong for doing that, right? It's so anybody listen to that, man. Yo, you're the strongest dude in the neighborhood if you go and get yourself fixed, man. Because there's a
absolutely,
lot of people counting on you.
absolutely, 100%. So, how long was it from getting home to your next deployment?
That was it because
Yeah.
so I go on this deployment and then my daughter has a stroke.
Oh
Um,
shit.
yeah, so we were prepping to go to Afghanistan, and it would have been about a year turnaround. And we were in that stage where you're starting to just get ready for it. You're running with gas masks on. You're doing all the plate carry runs. You're doing all of that like on a heavy basis. Um, Going to graph. You're going to do all of that. And we were actually on a lunchtime workout because that's what we started doing is workouts during lunch. And my daughter has a stroke, and they took her. If you've ever been to Bomb Holder, it's real small.
Mhm.
They don't have like a good hospital, so they take her to off post, and they misdiagnose her for 24 hours. And so when that's how this is how I ended up at Fort Belvoir. Uh, but they they ended up uh, doing an MRI and realizing, oh, she had a stroke and her brain is swollen. And if we don't do surgery like right now, she's gonna die. They couldn't do the surgery there, so they had like I think 3 hour window to move her from there to Hamburg, Germany. And so we moved to Hamburg at a specialty hospital. They do the surgery and they tell us that she'll never walk, talk, or eat on her own because the severity. It was like an adult-sized stroke on a 5 year old. She was only 5 at the time, and they said that because of the length of time that she was just not properly taken care of, the damage was done, and there was a rare disease that basically caused it, and it spread through the arteries and up, and it had consumed the right side of her brain. If you know anything about strokes, it's reversed. So if it attacks the right side, the left side is the one that becomes weak. And so they ended up saying, okay, hey, we're gonna send you to at the time Walter Reed was in DC. So this is before them moving to Bethesda. And so they're like, hey, we're gonna send you there. I'm like, okay. But my wife goes into labor. She was 38 weeks pregnant when this happened. So she goes into labor while my daughter's in ICU fighting for her life. She can't talk. And I almost felt it was the hardest feeling of my life because I almost didn't feel like I could be excited about my newborn because around the corner my daughter was fighting for her life. I like it was real fucked up emotions, dude. I'm not even gonna sit here and lie. And so they wouldn't allow my wife and my newborn to fly. So they separated our family. My oldest son, my daughter, and myself. We board a flight full of guys that got injured from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they fly us over to Walter Reed. And they tell me the same thing there that she'll never walk, talk, or eat ever again. And I remember getting really upset, like furious, because my whole life I've had to fight, dude. Like that's that is why I got my name Mr. Nasty, because I just don't stop fucking fighting, right? Like life has never been easy for me. And for these people that get paid all of this money to help us, they're not helping us, right? They're just saying, okay, well, they literally said, prepare for a life of her not being able to do anything, just
Yeah.
being a vegetable. And I'm like, how can you fucking justify telling a parent that, right?
Yeah.
So I started actually working with my daughter every single day, just out of rage. And I actually got her to talk, walk, and eat on her own. Before we
Nice.
left Walter Reed, she was doing all three. There's a whole story behind it, but um, yeah. And it was funny is during that whole time, so the first thing that came was her speech, and the doctors, I would tell them, and they were like, "Yeah, but." It was always a "yeah, but." Every time we would accomplish the next thing, finally got her to be able to bring a spoon up to her mouth, and I was so fucking excited. And I remember telling the doctors, and they're like, "Yeah, but you know what? She'll always need therapy for her speech, and her other arm doesn't work." And there's always like justifying their diagnosis, right? Like they
Yeah.
couldn't accept the fact that I was whooping their ass, right?
Hmm.
And then finally, after a long time of working with her to walk, she took her first steps. I actually have it on recording. And the whole, because we were in a ward full of kids that had really rare diseases. They couldn't leave that ward. So we couldn't even see all of all of Walter Reed. We were confined. Kids with leukemia. Some of these kids weren't ever going to make it out of there, man. Like so, and that just goes to show you, like wherever you are, there's always someone going through something worse, man. Like you don't have it as bad as you think you do, because somebody in another room, they're crying because they just lost their fucking kid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So like, there's a lot of perspective in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, but I ended up getting her to walk, and she had to go through chemotherapy and all these different things. So like it didn't stop, but she did all three things that they said that she would never do. 2 countries worth of doctors. So I ended up becoming going to Fort Belvoir, and they didn't know what to do with me in Fort Belvoir. So they had a instructor position. I ended up becoming an instructor. I taught combatives. I taught, uh, close quarters applications, basically, and I got to teach all 4 branches of the military. I taught SWAT, U.S. Marshals, FBI, CIA. I like, despite having to all that shit at my house, every time I would go home, I was still thriving at work, and I tried to separate it. Like, I didn't take my home life to work, and I didn't take my work home. So and that's where I think I was able to thrive in that situation because I had a lot on my plate. Because the army still expects what they expect, man.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, they do. Man, your daughter, she's a fighter. Look who her dad is.
Yeah, dude, she's amazing, and now she's 18, right? She works at the YMCA taking care of kids.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, dude, and they it's always negative, right? Until you can beat them at their own game. And it just goes to show that as long as you believe that you can do it, you can. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what it is. The Wright brothers believed they could fly, right?
yeah, and
No
they
one else
did.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So you're an instructor at Fort Belvoir, and you're teaching combatives and stuff like that. Uh, you mentioned falling off of a building or going headfirst off a building. What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, so that was in Diala, and we were searching for. So like, there's this gap of time. So everything, you keep saying you're all right, you're all right, you're all right, and I keep having like little things are happening to me. And it didn't help that when I got to Fort Belvoir, I was very engaged. Like, I love fighting. So this was like perfect for me. So, but I would get hit in the head a lot. And all of these things started, like, I would black out. My wife, I would be driving and I would be at a light and I would just go blank. Like, horns from cars are honking, but I'm gone. And it could be the concussions that you receive from being in IED explosions as well. I don't know, because I was involved in several of those as well. And then I went off the roof on an op. We were running after some dudes that we believed were running the culverts, and it was at night, and we had guys throwing some I can't, the mortars where it shines the light all over the field. I can't
Illumination.
even, yeah, some loom. There we go. So we were shooting loom over there trying to find them, and we were trying to exfil uh, to move into the field, and I couldn't, dude. I was so tired, and I missed the step and came straight off and landed head on my, like, head first. Like, my nods went right into my eye, uh, and yeah, I was out for a couple minutes, like 5 minutes, because I was, it's whole story. You know what I mean? Like, Iraqi building. I don't know how high that is, but it's a good height. You know what I mean?
Pretty fucking high.
Yeah, yeah, high enough, dude. Like, it rocked my world, man. And there was no help out there, right? So once I cleared the cobwebs up, I just kept going, and I just kept saying I'm all right. Then you get hit by an IED. Now all this stuff happens with my daughter, and then I go into combatives and I'm getting hit in the head, and I'm just taking blow after blow after blow. And finally the neurologists were like, yeah, dude, you've had TBI, like, and you just keep adding on to it because you won't stop. And so I was like blacking out, like I said, like, even while I was driving, like, it was gnarly, like, it wasn't a good situation. um and then I ended up having the 2 shoulder surgeries. I ended up getting medevac, or medically retired because of all the injuries. I couldn't, they were just like, "You're done, dude." Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I I went through something similar, and I know for me, when it was getting to that point where they were like, "Hey, it's time for you to get out," I had that identity crisis, right? That fucking this is what I know. The military is what I know,
Yeah.
and then and then the identity crisis of fucking. I see. Look, I can't even survive in the military. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was that like for you? Like when you got that news that they were going to medically retire you?
Oh yeah, I didn't like it. Well, I tried to fight it for a while, probably like 7, 8 months. But I got like, when I say that the army does not like when you go get help, and like they blackballed me. So I was the lead instructor for the entire MDM area, right? And I got nixed from my position. And then they put me into a treatment like the Intrepid Center for head injuries. And that was like the spiral out. And I was just like, what the fuck? I was so angry, dude. Like, I was really angry because I felt like there was no way that you could replace my skill sets like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've developed this over the last decade of my life. And I felt like I was being penalized for going all in.
Yeah.
Like my shoulder surgeries, or both shoulders, are from trainings,
Yeah.
right? I did that on the job for them. They made me instruct in a sling. On my first After my first shoulder surgery, I was in a sling still instructing a class.
Jesus Christ.
Dude, like when I say I was completely committed to the mission, I was all in. Like whatever the army wanted me to do, I was going to do it. You
Yeah.
know, and I felt like I was being penalized for that. So I had an identity crisis, yeah, but I also had a lot of anger. Right? So like when I got out, I like deleted all of my pictures. I went through this phase of saying fuck everything. Like that's when I think that's another reason why I went to drinking, because I was so pissed, dude. Like, all right, and maybe everyone can't relate to this, but for me, I'd never had an identity other than being nothing growing up. Like, I was never worthy. I never knew who I was. And then, like you said, finally, I'm in the army. I feel like I have my purpose. I feel like I'm really good at what I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so does the military, or else they wouldn't have placed me where they placed me throughout my career. And then I legit have issues, right? I legit hurt myself doing my job every single time. Every injury I have is from on the job shit. Not I was playing football and I went ham with the next door neighbor, right? Like none of that shit happened to me. I wasn't that guy. And you throw me under the fucking bus, right? You basically tell me that, you know, um, I don't deserve to have those positions anymore. And then you kick me out. I was I was done, dude. I was really upset, man. I didn't they ask you if when you retire if you want the ceremony or just to mail you this. I was like, just mail me this shit. I don't want to ever come back on the base. Like I was like I was feeling a certain kind of way, dude. Because like there's a lot of people when we're getting out, they want to get out. Like they really are desperate to get out, and they're excited about that transition. I was not that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely understand, man. I got taken from being a team chief of a guy of or a team of 9 guys to running the training room. And periodically the first sergeant like to walk in and run his fucking mouth. And I definitely did. I may or may not have told him to fuck himself a few times.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, 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 definitely not. So you get medically retired out of the army, and I'm assuming that that the struggle with the VA was right on par with what everybody is facing.
That was the one thing in my transition that was straight. So all of my shit from my deployment and all of the shit that all the injuries, I went and got help and got it all documented. And so I think I had an advantage being at Belvoir. They have the warrior transition unit right there. So
Yeah.
I was able to go and connect with the wounded warrior guys. So right when I found out that they were going to can me, like, and there was nothing else I could do, I went to them and I said, "Hey, will you guys help me with my transition?" And there was this old guy. I don't even think he's there. His name was Mr. Riley. He was one of the nicest dudes in the world. He was an old vet, and he worked. And this is before the wounded warrior came down with all this wild shit with the money. Um, he was a really nice guy, and he basically took my entire case for me while I was still enlisted. So by the time I was out, the only thing I had to fight for was the combat pay. They said I had to wait a few months, maybe a year, before I could get. But I got back pay for the combat pay, so that was nice.
Oh, that's good. I know I struggled a bit with the VA when I got out, but I'm glad that that got taken care of for you. So you get out and you're starting to transit, or you're transitioning into civilian life now, life of veteran, combat veteran, um, and you're starting to drink, man. Like drink more heavy. What was that like for you?
You know, I think I I think really what it is that you lose your purpose, right? And like I said, when you're in, it doesn't. I think because you're focused and you have a goal in front of you, you're moving in this direction. So it all makes sense. Life makes sense. Even your fights with your spouse makes sense because it's over military shit, right? It's just it's all par for the course, right?
Shit you can't control.
Right. But when you get out and now it's like you're saying I'm banged up, you've thrown me to the curb. I don't have a purpose anymore. And then it was like everything in my life hit me. So like I told you earlier, like I've always been able to kind of move past a lot of the shit that happened to me. And it was no different in the military. It just seemed like I was able to kind of transition better than a lot of guys. I'm not saying I didn't have any, right? But better than most. But now it was like I was bombarded for everything from when I was a kid, from what happened with my mom, like shit that I just didn't even think was relevant anymore, right? Was like just every night, dude. And my mind was just going, I would get like an hour of sleep, maybe two, right? So now I'm sleep deprived, right? I'm irritated. I'm frustrated. I don't understand why my life has turned out this way when I've done nothing wrong. So there's like all of these questions and all of this. I just started getting so fucking pissed, man. Like, and so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start drinking a little bit. I did in the military a little bit, and it helped me go to sleep. So, and then it just that became a dependency, right? Like it started with I'm gonna do this to go to sleep to I have to do this to go to sleep. And then I don't have any purpose anyway. I'm gonna get fucking slammed, right? And then it just became my identity. You know how you talked about the military's identity? That bottle became my identity, right? Like that's what I identified with. That's if I was happy, that's where I was going. If I was sad, that's where I was going. If I was angry, that's where I was going. That's what defined my life. And I just I was home, but I was not home. Right, I was gone, dude. And I started seeing a therapist. I was lying to my therapist. I was like, yeah, I don't drink this, that, and the third. And you know, I I was lying my ass off, dude.
Yeah.
Like I was probably drunk talking to him, Uh,
Hmm.
I just I I stopped caring again. It's like I almost went backwards. Like I almost went back to that kid in my teenage years that didn't care. It was like that person came back in me, right? I just didn't give a fuck. All right, she's gonna leave me. All right, whatever. Well, my kids don't like me. Well, why would they like me? I'm a fucking shitbag, right? I'm not them. All of this shit started just piling through my brain, man, and um, it was a lot of a lot of pain that I caused in my life because of not understanding what was happening within myself and not knowing how to really deal with it. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, Alcohol just makes everything worse, dude.
Yeah.
Everything worse. Like I'm a happy dude without it. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate a lot to that, man. I've had many stints of sobriety, but I always put it on somebody else, and I couldn't do it for myself. And yeah, but anyways, you start finding this love for bikes. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Well, right before all that, I tried to commit suicide, and
Mm,
so I had had enough one night and or one morning. I put my Glock to my head, and I was butt ass naked, crying like a fucking baby, dude. Like I'll never forget this. Like I was no clothes on, just just face beat red, and I had the gun, and I had my finger on the trigger. I was gonna squeeze the trigger, and or pull that trigger, should I say? And my dog jumped on me. He came in the door and jumped on me, started licking me, and saved my life. And
mm,
I knew that I needed to fix something. You know what I mean? Like I needed to do something. So I started riding motorcycles, and but I was still drinking. You know, like I still identified. I will say that it gave me a relief while I was riding. You know, and then in 2018, I'm riding one night and I'm actually about to go home and I'm at an intersection. And this kid that's going 18 miles, or he's like 18 years old, he's going about 45 miles an hour. He's on his phone, probably with his girlfriend or playing what they call it, Pokemon Go or some shit, right? Chasing after some wild shit. And he has his light turns red, but he doesn't see it because he's on his phone. And he blows through the light at 45, doesn't touch his brakes, and he blows through me. I'm like leaned into the turn, looking at the interstate, and he blows through me. And everybody that was there thought I was gonna die. Somehow, obviously, I didn't. Right, I'm here, and I didn't even get that severe of injuries. Like I had a severe concussion again, and then I had a really gnarly laceration on my calf where the motorcycle went through my calf,
mm.
and some road rash. Other than that, no broken bones, nothing. Right, like just bruised up really bad, but nothing too crazy. Right, other than the concussion was gnarly, but other than that, I was straight. So, but it takes me like a year to really get back on the motorcycle. I had a lot of fear kind of around it, right? And I was like, but I had to face it. Like I had to face it. So in 2020, I get like five other guys. And I'm like, let's go. We're riding. And about three or four of them are vets. So that was I felt secure, right? Like five Harleys. They're all Harleys, like loud as fuck. Like, and this
Can't miss
minivan,
them.
right? How do you do it, right? This dude in a minivan traveling with his family on vacation is going around. We're going about 65 miles an hour, and he's in the middle lane on I-95, and he swerves over into my lane. And there's a Jersey barrier to my left, and there's construction where they're widening the interstate. So he comes over at 65, so there's like not a lot of time to process everything, right? And I'm like, fuck, and he hits me. I don't really remember anything after that, right? Like, but I do know I have pictures and shit. And basically, he hit me so hard, my motorcycle went into the Jersey barrier and was like ingrained into the Jersey barrier, right? The cement Jersey barrier. It never fell back down. It was
Holy shit.
imprinted in there. I flew into the construction zone, and the guys that were military ran to me and started, giving me first aid. And I think that uh, they finally got the ambulance there, and on the way to the first hospital, I flatlined. Yeah, they couldn't help me because it wasn't a trauma center in the first place. So all they could do was stabilize me, make sure that I wasn't gonna fucking die, and then they sewed up. That's where my beard got cut. That
Mm.
they chopped it like I was Chinese. Uh, and so like when it grew back like I was like this wise old samurai master. But that's why I ended up, here we go, right? Because it grows all fucking weird now. But um, then they sent me to VCU in Richmond, and once they got me there, I had my first surgery, and they didn't realize that the injuries were so bad that the MRI didn't even see it all. So when they opened me up, there were injuries covering other injuries.
Holy shit.
Um, he had broken my femur was completely broken. My hip was shattered. My pelvis was shattered. And so they ended up like having to do an immediate second surgery because they weren't prepared for the all the injuries that were opened up and or were in there when they opened me up right before the second surgery. I don't know if you ever had surgery, but they line you up, and the the room that you're about to go into surgery in is right there, and they do these like last check vitals and just make sure you're not gonna like fucking die.
Yeah.
Well, they're talking to me, and I think I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you, but I'm not. I'm like blah, 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 blah. So they think I'm like stroking out. Everything starts going hot for me, right? And I'm trying to tell them that I feel hot, but it's just coming out with gibberish. And then I flatline. And I flatline right in front of there. And I actually have like kind of like an outer body experience, dude. It was weird, man. Like I could see I was gone, right? But I could see the doctors, I could see the nurses holding my lifeless body up and them trying to get because my heart rate when they finally um, revived me, my heart rate was at like 190, 195. And they were like, if it continues to spike, he really will have a stroke, right? So we have to get it down. And I could hear all of that, but I wasn't conscious, like
Mm.
at all. It was wild, man. And I woke up in the ICU room. I was in the hospital for 14 days, in ICU for 7. If you know anything about the hospital, that's a long fucking time, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Long time, especially in ICU. My daughter was in ICU, and 7 days is a while, but it was like the best thing that could happen to me. It was COVID, so 2020, right? And so they wouldn't allow my family, and no one. And my phone was busted on the bike, so I had nothing to know when. Time kind of like stopped, like 4 a.m. felt like 4 p.m. Like nothing, none of it mattered to me, right?
Yeah.
And I faced the man in the mirror, dude. I had no alcohol. I had nothing to ease my mind, and I had no one coming to save me, dude. Like I couldn't walk, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't, it's not like I could fucking hightail it out of there, right? Like I was stuck, dude. And I faced that dude. And when I shit you not, dude, when I left 14 days later, I was not the same man. I was not the same man. Like, and what's crazy is I've been off a roof. I've been involved in another wreck that was really bad that I should be counting my blessings, but I just went back to drinking again, you know? And for some reason, this horrible ass situation just made me just flipped. It was like you're here for a reason, like and your time isn't done. You have something to do, and it all just started becoming clear to me, man. Like, and it started in that process of me facing me, realizing that what had happened was then right
Yeah.
and all of that is what made me stronger, right? Like if I hadn't have gone through what I did with my kid or as a kid, I wouldn't have been able to handle what happened with my daughter, right? If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have been able to handle what's going on with me right now in this wreck. So like it all came clear to me that everything in our life happens for a reason and it's building us for that next moment, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, then I just it was like I'm gonna start helping people, man. Like I feel like that's why I'm here. Is I got a story, and there's a lot of people hurting, man. There's a lot of people, and this world doesn't help. Everything's about taking yourself away from the issue, right? Instead of just coming face to face with it, slaying that bitch, right?
Yeah.
Skull dragging that motherfucker and saying, "No, I own this," right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Man, that's wild.
yeah,
That's insane. I I've been asked many times, would you change anything in your life? And I said no, because if I changed one thing, I don't know I would be right here doing this exact thing.
amen.
And then that's that moment that you have to come to realize like everything in your life, good or bad, led you to where you are now.
Yeah,
And you can either choose to accept that or run from it. And I chose to accept it because I'm out here doing this, and you're you're doing what you're doing, which we'll get to in a second. And we all have a story to share and an experience, and life doesn't stop because we get sober and shit and like get clean or get off the drugs or we're out of the hospital. Life keeps going on and it'll punch us right in the goddamn face, but it's how you change your perspective. So what are you doing now to help people out?
Yeah, man. So I speak, right? I actually just spoke in Richmond a couple weeks ago. And so I have a speech called The Legend of You. I have a podcast called The Legend of You. And really I have two hats that I'm wearing. We're about to launch a marital um coaching program, me and my wife, where we help marriages because we've been through so much. And there were times where we were about to quit and call it, but we faced that, and we're happier now than we've ever been, dude. And we've looked back over our life and said, okay, here's some principles, some time tested things that we know that work, that we can give other couples and help them get through their shit so they can have something strong, something prosperous, right? You don't get married with somebody with the hopes that you get divorced in 2 years, right?
Fuck
Or
no.
even 20 years. Like there's people calling it quits after 20, right? And so we're trying to make a dent in that because we looked at the divorce rate, and it's nuts, man. It's like almost 50%. And then second marriages, remarriages are 60, and third marriages are 70. So it just goes up. If you get one divorce, then your next relationship has a higher chance of failing, right? So get it right the first time, and so we're gonna help people that are married for 2 3 times as well. But if we can help you avoid getting a divorce, then that's what we're going to try to do. And then I also do like mindset coaching, personal coaching for people that want to become the best versions of them, and that's where the Legend of You came from. It's the Legend of You LLC, and it's all about becoming the best version of you, right? A lot of mindset, a lot of self development and personal development involved in that. Doing some hard things, building the confidence in yourself, and knowing that you're a badass, right? And so that's what I try to help people understand and realize within themselves is that you're a badass, man. Start walking in that shit. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Sometimes it takes an accident to unlock that, and then sometimes it, it,
yeah,
it takes a suicide attempt to unlock it.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
we all have
yeah,
our experiences.
absolutely. All right. So before we go, Chad, do you have any advice or suggestion for somebody that's struggling? Maybe a vet, maybe civilian, maybe just somebody that's struggling with either addiction or their mental health disorders. What would you give them?
I got two things for you. One, you are exactly where you need to be, right, for the change and to learn the lessons that will change your life, right? You're exactly where you need to be. You don't need to be anywhere else. Second thing is everything that you need is already inside of you. And it's a hard concept to understand. But if you start looking within, right, you're going to start finding that you're an amazing human being, that you don't need those things, right? Why do you want alcohol to have the power over you, right? Why do you want anything or anyone, right, to control you? So once we start looking within ourselves, we can start finding that power. We can start finding that we are an amazing human being. We have purposes. Like we all have amazing talents, right? So I hope that helps some people. You are exactly where you need to be, and everything that you need is already on the inside of
Absolutely. That first bit sounds like page 417 from the big book to me.
you. Yeah.
anyways, Chad, I want to say first off, thank you for your service to this country, man.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Same to you.
And you are a huge inspiration.
Well,
Uh,
thank
you're an inspiration to myself, and you're going to be an inspiration to many around you. And you keep doing the good work, man. You keep fighting the good fight, and you're changing lives.
you. Man, I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate being on the show, and it's an honor and a pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely. Where can we find you, Chad?
So, MrTenacity.com or MyBulletProofMarriages.com. Facebook, Chad Osinga. I'm easy to find. Facebook's like my biggest platform. So if you shoot me a message, I'll definitely hit you back as long as you don't try to sell me some crazy stuff. Like, I don't know why people are trying to sell me everything, but I don't want it. Right.
I'm spending my money wisely here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All righty. All right, Chad. I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, man. And I can't wait to hear and see you doing more good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, and everybody, thank you guys for joining and listening in and just listening to Chad share his inspiration with us, man. All right, till next time, much love.